So folks, welcome to Alchemist Book Club. Here again, we are catching up in order to discuss about JK and his books. JK has been a very well-known person in the field of philosophy and spiritual teachings, though not in the name of spirituality. But he has been always a mystery to many people who start or begin to read about him, his books. And as in their community also, they encourage to read books and discuss and what they call as study. Here we are in this meeting in Alchemist Book Club in order to take up his books, some of these books, and then maybe discuss, ponder, share our thoughts around them to see if we can make any sense of it and what is that his words are guiding us into. So welcome to Alchemist Book Club once again. All of you are known figures, so you know what Alchemist Book Club is all about. It's been a 4+ year club of activities of discussing books of various genres. And right now, we are taking big steps in order to make more people to join the community in terms of not just the readers, but the authors, publisher, traders, so that as a community, we'll be able to have a much more engaged activities that can help us to indulge, if I can say. So with that little bit of an speech, okay, let me just call upon Sathya Narayanan, who's so fascinated about JK, and introduce him and his books, his thoughts, so that we can carry out our discussions today. Over to Sathya.
Thanks, TG. Is my screen visible? Okay. Is Shobha there? Because I would rather answer her question first before I get going. JK being, as one of my teachers said, who was he? Was he a philosopher, religious preacher, rationalist, or a teacher? This confusion everyone had. Those who attended these sessions, those who read the books, will always have this doubt, because many a times whatever he spoke, or what is even today that we can see printed in his books, there could be many contradictions. So the confusion always was there. Okay. For all we know, he was identified by Theosophical Society, and they took over him and trained him, and the plan was that he should be introduced as the teacher of the world. I mean, he's here to teach as a teacher. He's going to change the world. So that is how all the preparation for years he was prepared. He was trained to be the teacher of the world, and Theosophical Society adopted him and kind of prepared him for the grand day. And when the day came, they kind of announced on the stage that here is the teacher of the world, we are presenting blah, blah, blah. And the gentleman walked up to the mic and said, no, I'm not the teacher. So that's how he started up. So controversy was there right from his very first statement, though the Theosophical Society introduced him as a teacher and he refused to be a teacher. Then what was he? Ideal question will always be asked. Well, he touched upon everything, philosophy, he touched upon religion, though he agreed or not agreed is a question that we can see it later. A rationalist, yeah, to some extent, he is different from communist. A rationalist is somebody who wanted to analyze everything in detail. In that way, he is a rationalist. Every topic thrown at him, he used to analyze it in depth. So that is the way he was. Was he a teacher? In a way, yes, because though Theosophical Society wanted him to be a teacher, which he refused to accept it. But his concept, he spoke about so many things. But of all the things, his policies on education and the way he wanted to, reform that particular, domain, that itself is a testimony of him. He certainly has to be a teacher because the way he took care of his teachers in the schools, his own schools, in the sense Krishnamurti Foundation runs many schools across India and other geographies. And the way the school is, functioning, that itself is a testimony that he is the best teacher in the world. But this confusion was there. I mean, if he's the best teacher, and why is he not able to understand? Many of us who read the book, I know they will get rejected because they don't understand a simple concept. Why is he struggling to explain? That's how it is. When you read the book, you will never get this confusion because it is actually a transcript of what he spoke. But if you listen to his videos, but today is not there. So obviously we only have the videos and the audio to listen to. A lot of MP3 and even audio cassettes are available. If you listen to it, a live speech which was recorded and released as MP3, you will get the confusion as to, I mean, he is such a celebrated speaker and thought author, teacher, or what do you call it, anything else. And why is he full of doubts? That kind of doubt we will get it. Anyway, and his contemporary was Osho, Rajneesh, okay? And many a times people were asking questions to Osho about what he thinks of JK, and to JK what he thinks of Osho, okay? Osho thought JK was a madman. He, in as many words, he used to say JK is a madman, don't go near, anywhere near him. That is how he would say. I'll give you the best example. Say, for example, you are hungry and you want food, okay? On one side you have Osho, on the other side you have JK sitting. You go to Osho and say, I am hungry, I want food. He will say, just go down the corridor, turn left, there will be cafeteria, you eat what you want and then be happy. That's it. That's what Osho would say. If you go to JK and say, I am hungry, I want food, he will say, how do you know you are hungry? Are you really hungry, or you saw someone else hungry and you felt that you too are also hungry? What are the signs that you had for hunger? Is it stomach pain? It could be some other reason, right? It could be a pain caused by something else that you ate previous day. It could cause some allergy. It could be a pain. How do you know it was hunger? I'm sure there would have been certain conflict in your mind before you concluded that you are hungry. You see, the conflict comes because you were conditioned. The conditioning was the reason, very reason why you had the conflict. Was it hunger or was it something? You had these problems. And that is why you come to a conclusion that you are hungry. But why do you think you need food? It could be anything else, right? Maybe you are thirsty, you drink some water and you will be okay. And why do you think you need food? See, that is again because of conditioning. You are always conditioned that you need to eat food when you are hungry. Not necessary. You may be needing a little bit rest. You could have taken rest. You need, because human is always under tremendous conflict because of this conditioning. Unless you are free of this conflict, he goes on talking. By the time that guy would have even fainted. The guy who is so hungry, who came for food, he would have fainted. But that is how JK would respond. Not just that, he will go on saying that, look, if you're really hungry, you would not be standing in front of me and asking that, where is the food? You would have followed your nose. Your nose would have taken you right to the corridor and you would have left and you would have smelled the food there in the cafeteria. You would have reached the cafeteria. But is that all? Once you go there, you will see chapati and dal. And you are from Chennai and you will be thinking, oh my God, I need rice and sambar. Without it, I cannot survive. I cannot eat chapati. What is that? That is again conditioning. You see, man is full of conditioning. That is why there is so much of conflict in his mind. So this is the lengthy answer that he gives. All he said is, I am hungry, I want food. Osho would have simply said, go there, canteen is there, just eat. And this guy would give a lengthy answer. He would try to kind of talk to him to find out whether he is really hungry and go on like this. So many of the times, if you read his books, a particular topic, okay, the topic is given. If there are 2 pages of content for the particular topic, you can safely ignore the first 3 or 4 paragraphs. Go straight to the 5th or 6th one. That would have a content which is closer to what the questioner was expecting. And then the last paragraph would probably link these 2. that is his style of speaking or answering the question. Okay. Now, in this slide, I said the whole movement of life is learning. There are a few phrases that he is so fond of. Okay, we are in it together. Let's explore it. And the whole movement of life is learning is something which is he firmly believed, and he said like we are every moment of we being awake, we are learning something. So the life is everything, nothing but learning. So that's why he said. So I thought I'll just use that one here. Okay. Now, he was more of a question and answer session type person. Though he would speak in any sessions, he would speak for first 20 minutes in a particular topic, and then he will switch over quickly to maybe others can go on mute. And then he would say, let's open the floor for questions. And typically there would have been written questions that he will answer it, or then there are questions you can directly ask him, and then he will go on answer. Okay. Just as you can see in this slide, the typical response is this. Okay. You will always say, together we are going to seek, find, discover the right answer. Okay. In everything, together we are going to find the meaning and significance of the question. When you ask a question, he will go deep dive into the question itself. That I said, like when a guy comes and say, I am hungry, he will say, how do you know that you are hungry? What are the signs? In a similar way, any question thrown at him, you will always say, let's understand the question. Okay. And we are in it together. That is why he said there is no authority here. I am no different than you. Just because I am sitting in the platform and answering your question does not mean I am knowledgeable than you, or I am in any kind of authority here. So we are in it together. Probably the reason is, I'll come to it when we talk about education, why he emphasized saying that he is not an authority. Okay, I structured in this session, whatever the session that we have, on many topics, because you go to any of his books, they are mostly cataloged into a topic, like you see emotions, security, and it goes on like this: fear, integrity, leadership, many topics like this, and that is how it is. So I just taken up few topics here and then had some content taken from his books as a snapshot, and I'm keeping it ready for discussion. Okay. Should we go on in the monologue, or would like to pause here, or any questions or doubts you have, or anything you want to share? Because some of you would have read his book. Some of you would have, like Kamini, even he attended his session in Mumbai. That was, he said, long time back, and something like that. If there is some input for me, then we can just move in that direction. I'll pause here for a while. Open to any questions or anything specifically you would like to know about it. I'll go to the topic and then we can go on. The first question is always, the first person to speak is always trouble, right? Anyone wants to start? TG?
Yeah, interesting comparison you made about Osho and JK. Sathya, can you hear me?
Yeah.
Yeah, but that's not what I think of Osho also, because he is also one man who will make a person faint before he answers anything on anger. So that's what I also feel, because he is also question answer types.
He is a question answer type, but then he can talk, for 2 hours, 3 hours non-stop on any given topic. He doesn't need prompts, questions. Anyway, that's it.
Yeah, I understand. But a very interesting comparison to start with, because they are contemporaries. Yes. Yeah, I'm eager to look at what he has discussed under various topics. It's going good. Anybody else want to ask anything? I think there is people would like to know more about this life and education, etc. Yes.
Okay.
I have a doubt.
Yep.
Sathya, Sridhar here.
Yes, sir. Good.
See, okay, I'm a beginner as far as JK is concerned. So I'm okay. So I just want to know, can you suggest some book which I can actually pick up, which might make it relevant for me? The JK will be more relevant. For me, he's an enigma. I mean, I've always heard a lot of people say a lot of things about him, but then where do I begin?
May I suggest Sathya to answer that in JK style?
Certainly. In fact, I myself, as I said in one of the teasers, there are two books that I thought I will recommend here. If you wait for a while, then I'll come to it definitely. Or you want
Okay. No. I'll do that.
No, sure. Okay. As I said, he's very in the sense focused on answering questions, because he probably took that role of a teacher, though he never claimed to be a teacher, role of a teacher very seriously. And he said, like, people should have clarity in their thought, and that results in clarity in action and purpose and everything. So he would always say, let's understand the question first. Okay, so one of the phrase that in many of the books would have some short heading and then a paragraph that introduces the particular topic and then goes on like this. At one stage he says we should ask a lot of questions, okay, not only to the speaker but to ourselves. One strange thing is he refers to himself as speaker in all those discussions. He says he talks about himself in third person. He said the speaker, or somebody is asking a question to the speaker says this. The speaker never claims to be a teacher. That is how he speak about himself. The speaker. Okay. Now, so he goes on to say we should ask a lot of questions, not only to the speaker but also to ourselves. Not just superficial questions, not questions about theories, hypotheses, or some speculative religious concept. We must question our own thinking. Why we think in a particular way, why we behave in a certain way, why we accept tradition, what our relationship with each other is. That is how we prompt the user to go into the question. If a question comes to your mind, there has to be a reason for it, right? So he says, let's first understand the reasons, because the answer comes from there. So we are not answering the questions. We will explore the questions together, and you will have to find the answer yourself. Not that I answer it and you accept it. Okay. So you will have to find the answer yourself. That is how he will set the stage for any question and answer session. Further to it, he also talks, there is one more thing. Okay. But when you ask a question, when somebody gives you an answer, okay, how do you take it? May I point out that we seem to live on explanations. Okay, we put a question, and if there is an answer to it, we are either satisfied or dissatisfied. Explanation, descriptions, and commentaries are really a lot of words, a lot of theories, and we seem to live on those words, and it's like living on ashes. We are generally starved psychologically and intellectually if we live on words. So if we are going to be getting into those questions in merely investigation of words, then we are not going anywhere. So he says, don't get satisfied with the answer. I mean, the words, like you go behind that to understand the meaning or the emotions behind it. That is how he says. And of course, we all have questions. Okay. But why do we get questions? What is the right kind of questions? Because obviously, if you are a teacher, you will know there are students who will always ask questions. But he or she would be able to differentiate a bright student and a student who is not so bright. He will say there are some questions which is, though we say there is no question is idiotic or stupid question, all are valid because they had some doubt, they are asked. But if you have the right questions, getting a right question is an art. Okay, that is what he says, is to put the right question is an art. When you put a question, you are putting it to somebody else or to yourself. You need to be very, very clear on that. And he goes on to say, if the question is important, does the answer lie in the question or away from the question? Is the answer contained or held in the question itself or away from it? We are going to examine the question, not to try to find the answer to it, because in the examination of the question, itself lies the answer. He firmly believed because the very question, if analyzed, leads to answer. You don't have to go anywhere else. You don't have to search or seek a guru or a teacher, anything. A question comes to your mind, that means you are ready for the answer. Just understand yourself. Ask yourself why that question has come. What kind of conditioning you are in. What is the conflict that you have in your mind? These are the words that he will keep on using. Seemingly, when you read his books, like on any given topic, he will bring the conflict and differences between Hindus, Buddhists, Muslims, Americans, European, Catholics. Everything will come in every topic. Just to analyze, he kind of reiterates saying that there is so much of conflict in our mind. That's how it goes. Okay. I hope it is clear that you and I are going to examine the question, see the nature of question, what the significance of the question is, and in the understanding of the question, the answer will be revealed in the question. That's how he writes in one of the book. So asking the right question is an art. Okay. So when you have a question, think about it. And he will always say, let's think about it together. Let's think together. Why does he say that? I mean, there was a question put to him saying that, what do you mean when you ask us to think together? Do you intend that everybody who listens to you should think with you at the same time? Don't you think that this is acting as a guru, leading people to follow your ideas, thoughts, and conclusions? That's a question put forward to him. And the first sentence he says, the word guru is discredited word. Okay. So thinking together is not accepting what the speaker is saying. It is not agreeing with or accepting the ideas and conclusions which he may have. The speaker, in fact, has no conclusions. He talks about himself. But he says, think together in the sense that both of us observe together. Observe and let us find out what it means to observe. That doesn't give him any authority. You can make him into an authority, which would be unfortunate, but doesn't have any authority, and he denies any kind of following. He says, that is why he said, let us think together. I will guide you. It's more of a guided thinking process. He goes to that. It's about thinking together. And when he said use the word observing. Okay, let's observe it together. And he goes on to explain in a different book, different chapter. He says, who is the observer? You say I. Is there an observer? The I, the witness, the one who is observing? Your past knowledge, your past memories, your past remembrance are you. So the observer is the past. Anything that you observe, it is always registered in your mind based on what the past conditioning that you had. You see a tree and you immediately recognize as a tree. How does it? It could be anything else, right? But you are conditioned, your brain was conditioned saying that it was a tree. So you had an idea about what a tree looks like, how it should smell or feel or anything. So that is what you are always thinking from your past. Okay. An observer, a true observer, is always looking at the present. The conflict arises right from here. That's what he says. The past is looking at the present and it gets confused. So look at logically first, and then you might see the reality of it. The observer is always the past, and that which he observed is still the past. He's looking at it from the past, therefore it is still the past. So the present is the past, and the present contains the past, the present, and the future. I believe anybody who reads it will get confused, right? I mean, there's so much of wordplay is into action here. I won't go into right now. Just a second, I get a call. It is too complex. I leave it for the moment. And he says, after all this, he says it is too complex. He's the one actually made it very complex, isn't it? I mean, always saying that anything I look at it from my past experience. All the conditioning that I had, my brain is tuned to see. When I see a book, I say it is a book. It could be anything. It could be a tablet which is in the form of book. But I see, because I was told it is a book, it is how a book looks, I look at it as a book. That's how he says, to observe can you observe anything without bringing your past into it? Then you are truly observing things. It's very difficult. Look, probably a child could do it because child probably would forget what it has done something in the past and immediately try to do the second time. But we adults, we immediately form that opinion. Okay, let's not do it. So we move on to next one. Shobha ma'am, I don't know when you joined. Were you there when I spoke about Osho and when he asked for food but to Osho and when he asked for food to JK? You weren't. Okay. No issues. You can always listen to it later, or I will talk to you separately on that. I was only trying to say why JK is so confusing. I just gave a difference between a philosopher who answered a question very simply and a JK who tried to give a long and winding answer for that question. Okay. Let me go a little different, maybe on thought. Okay.
Yeah, your screen is not shared. Is that?
Yeah.
Okay.
It's okay. See, I had those PPT, just few slides, and I have extracts of books as a photographs from there. I'm reading it. I will put them all together and share the PPT later, right? People can look at it. Okay. Now, what is a thought? See, many still assumed he was a philosopher. So many of the questions will be like all these in this direction. People always ask, okay, what about death? What about security? These kind of questions will come. And obviously these questions like, what is the thought? What is an observer? All that will also be there. This is about death. And he says, can thought examine itself? Can thought look at it itself? Can you be aware when a thought arises? Of course we can. But who is the entity that is being aware of thought arising? It is still a thought. We have divided a thought into the thinker and the thought. So the difficulty in this inquiry is that we are never able to go beyond the thought. Our whole way of living is based on thought. That is the only instrument we have apart from emotion, which is still a thought. Okay, feeling, romantic, sentimentality, and so on and so forth. It is all involved in thought. We have never been able to inquire if there is something beyond thought, something which we can understand clearly. Look, besides this body, the mind. So I think a couple of days back there was a discussion on so many things, and I said mind is nothing but a combination of all our thought. The thought is nothing but everything is gets shaped in the form of a thought and then registered in our brain. So he says, you and thought, how do you differentiate between you and thought? Probably this is the same question what Rajneesh would have answered in much more thing, and he would put it across very clearly, whereas he would simply leave it as a question. He will ask you to think further. He doesn't have an answer for this. He will just say this is how he leads you to think for yourself. Can you be different from your thought? That's the question. If you go to Osho, he will probably take you to a stage where you can be different from it. I mean, how you can stand apart and then observe yourself as a third person. Whereas he would simply push you to that level. You just go and find a way where you can be different from your thought and leave that.
Sathya, I have a point to share here.
Yes.
See, whenever I read, JK, I need to read it twice or thrice, many more times, maybe after a few weeks, few months, to understand what he's trying to say. But overall, the effect of his language or writing had been having an effect of something that will slow down your thinking, right? So to me, whenever I pick up JK, I know that he is an ultra slow thinker. Like he is simply able to catch the rising of his thoughts. And even before that, maybe the intention of, rising of the thought and things like that. Now, I'm not sounding like JK now, but he is like, he is ultra slow thinker. So he is able to break it down into micro nanoseconds of what's happening to him, which is trying to put it into words. So that's why when there is a question, he goes on attacking one particular thing, that how did this question arise first? You think about it, then you will stay away from the question and then you will find the answer. So because when you stay away from the question, the answer is there along with the question. So that's the premises under which he is teaching, I guess. So I just wanted to share this and your thoughts on this.
Okay. Many of the enlightened people, if you observe them talking or speaking on a topic or anything, there is always a pause, considered pause, we can call it. They don't speak like, it's a speech competition where you need to kind of deliver 500 words within 2 minutes or 3 minutes. It doesn't go like that. Okay? And they probably understand their responsibility, and they are being kind of taken seriously by those who are listening to him. So they need to be answerable and they need to get the right words. Each word matters to them, because we, as I said in one of the, I read out from JK, we still believe in words because we live at a superficial level. For us, the words are important. The words are important. So we look at it from that perspective, saying that if somebody says like this, maybe it will have a weightage, and we try to interpret it like that. But he, for all, like Osho, if you go to Osho, he have absolutely no respect for JK, and he will say this guy is a much confused person, conflicted person, and he's probably a joker, and all that he would say, because he is not accepted. He is the kind of a man who was day in and day out, he was a pain. JK was constantly in pain. Okay? A pain of not being able to live the way he wanted to. He was a prisoner of circumstances, to put it very nicely. So that is how he was. So his words, if you one of the best test of intelligence is to put things in a simplistic way. He failed miserably. He cannot put anything in a simplistic. Or maybe that was his style. I don't know. He thinks it is the simplest way of saying it. But when you read others on a particular same topic, for example, then you realize there is another way of putting across the same point, which could be much more easy, much more simpler to understand. That's how it is. He needlessly complicated his responses. Or probably he spoke to, most often he spoke to a society, a culture, which had a higher level of language proficiency. Okay, most of the time he was probably in Europe and US when he spoke. And when he comes to Chennai and speaks, okay, probably Chennai people are people in Varanasi where he had his school and he spoke there a lot, but don't have that much of English proficiency, where they found it very, very tough to understand. I mean, why is he using? Because see, the very first book that I bought was in 1989, a simple book like this one, Question and Answer. And without dictionary, I could not read a single page. Okay, those days my English was so pathetic, and I was reading from a completely Tamil medium guy, studied in Tamil medium, and for me English was a subject. And this guy's book, I mean, it's like you cannot read a page without having dictionary with you and trying to understand it. And there is always an easier and a simpler word for every word that he used. And why was he using that complex word? That is always a question that I had in mind, but I realized over a period of time, having read so many and being part of the culture of JK schools, that is style. That's how it is. So you read his books. I think you would agree. Like when you need to, for a concept to go into your head, you need to be ready for it. You might forget about JK. You could be reading any other book, okay, even a Tirkural. You might be reading it 10 times. Only in the 11th time it will hit you. or a simple concept, Vivekananda says something, and you would have read it so many times, you would have seen it on the road or any of the quotes anywhere. But it will make sense to you when it is supposed to make sense to you. That is the beauty of it. I mean, suddenly that is because your mind was ready to accept the knowledge and accept that wisdom at that time only. Or that is the wisdom that you are seeking it, and it reaches you at that time. That's how it is. JK books also the same books. Like as I said, it's in 1989 I bought this book, and the concept, the questions are the same when I buy a book in 2022. Okay, he has spoken about the same topic for 50 years, 60 years. And the same answer will be there, but a little more refined language. That's all. That's the only difference you will see it. But more or less, you need to get used to his style of language. That's all. That is his style. I wouldn't say intention, because later I realized that's the kind of training he had it. Those are obviously, if you read today a book of say this British books, any of those famous even Shakespeare's English, you wouldn't be able to read it comfortably, right? Unless you are English literature person, you'll find it what kind of English is this? The Queen's English. That's how he complicates things. Okay. And shattering. Okay. There is a question: why is my mind chattering, so restless? The answer: have you ever asked that question for yourself? Why is your mind so restless, always chattering, going from one thing to another, moving from one entertainment to another? Why is your mind chattering? And what will you do about it? You know, that person asked one question, and he is asking back 6 further questions to that same guy. That is his style. Okay. Whereas you ask this to any other philosopher, he will try to answer it, and he says, so he goes on to say, so what will we do? We can examine the causes of chattering, how chattering is part of the mind being occupied. Okay. The mind, the whole structure, the brain must be occupied with something, with television, with cooking, with cleaning of the house, with football, with going to church. It is always occupied. Why must it be occupied? If it is not occupied, okay, or you are not rather uncertain, do you not fear being unoccupied? It's like this. For many other people, they cannot sit alone. If they are alone at home, they will get paranoid. They need to be amidst people. That's our mind also. It cannot be quiet. You immediately, you have nothing to do. You rather sit, close your eyes, sit and go into meditative silence, but you cannot. You will immediately switch on the TV and you will try to watch something, or you pick up a book, or try to call up your friend, or go into WhatsApp and write something in ABC, right? So the mind is always occupied. You are intentionally keeping it occupied is what he says. So deep down, to avoid the loneliness with all its agony that it brings, the mind occupies itself with everything else except that. And then that becomes the occupation. From being occupied with all these outward things, it says, I am lonely, that is my trouble. How am I to get over it? And you start thinking that you are miserable, so back to chattering. So all he says is your mind is afraid of being alone. He's afraid of being quiet. So you intentionally adding something to your chattering. Okay, that is what he says. He doesn't answer. He doesn't answer beyond that, saying that how to keep the mind quiet. His intention is, if you understand the basic question, you will find the answer, because a thirsty person will always find water. Like that, if you understand why the thought comes to you, why my mind is not quiet, why is it chattering, then you go back. For every answer that you get, you ask why. You go further down, and then you will find a way. One day or other, you will reach a stage where your mind will be quiet. You will understand, oh, wait, I am trying to escape. Because many times, even if you, in Instagram, if you go to his field, his what do you call it, account, there are a lot of videos. Okay, he says we escape. Always we try to escape from our suffering, escape from our loneliness. So that is what the mind does. We always escape. So we keep chattering all the time. And there is another question people ask about symbols. He says, I derive strength from concentrating on a symbol. I belong to a group that encourages this. Is this an illusion? Okay. Response says, do not belong to anything. Okay, we cannot stand alone. We want support. We want the strength of others. We want to be identified with a group, with an organization. That is where we feel comfortable, he says. So the questioner says that he derives strength from concentrating on a symbol. We all have symbols. The Christian world is full with symbols, concepts, belief, ideals, dogmas, and the same in India too. Okay, now one belongs to a large group which adores the same symbol. Okay, they derive enormous strength from it. It creates a feeling that at least there is someone else who understands the same thing because they also follow the same symbol. First, if we invent the symbol, now that's how our mind works. An image of the church or in the temple, and then we start worshipping it. We derive strength from it. The symbol is not the actual thing. The actuality may never exist, but the symbol satisfies you, so you are going with it. Surely that which has been created by thought must be an illusion. This whole symbol that you yourself created, be it a church, be it a temple, or the idols in it, everything is created by your thought. Okay, so surely that which has been created by thought must be illusion. Okay, if you create me as your guru, though I refuse to be a guru, it is absurd and it is your illusion. Okay. So he says, don't believe in a symbol because that is an illusion, that is created by thought. That is his stand. If you ask him whether he is a religious philosopher, this answers the question. He is never a religious person. He always is against religion. He might, to that extent, he may say against religion because he says organized religion is nothing but what do you call it? Sham. He believes that way. It may shock some people, but that is how his thought is. Okay, and what else? Simplicity. You would be surprised. So one question is asking, somebody is asking, what is simplicity? What is real simplicity? That's a question they asked. Okay. Now, what kind of answer, TG? I'm just playing devil's advocate. If you are to answer, how do you answer it? What is simplicity?
Why me?
Because you are the only one who spoke so far. Others are not speaking.
Right, let's listen from Kamini, Sridhar, Ramji is here.
Nice.
Kalpana, yes, go ahead.
Yeah. So for me, simplicity would mean less of everything. Okay.
Any other thought? Any other ideas or answers to that? So you put it in simple, one sentence or two sentences. Whereas if you go to JK, he writes 4 pages for this. The question was, what is real simplicity? And there was a 4-page of content in the book. He says the same question could be put differently. Let us discuss what is simplicity and then find out what is real simplicity. The meaning of 2 words, real and simplicity, you can find in the dictionary. But to understand what simplicity requires a great deal of thinking, a great deal of inquiry. That is his habit, okay? You simply ask anything, you say, let's inquire into it. Let's think together. Let's think into it. That's how it goes on. Simply, word simplicity.
Intellectual.
Good. I'll come to the intellectual part a little later. I think that was answered, right? In one of the WhatsApp chat, which I don't know, I write every day, so I forgot. Okay. See, his start is this concept of it, like if there is a question, let's go deep diving into it. First, the word that you used. Are you sure that is a word that you wanted to use? That's what when he says I'm hungry, the question that he asked is like, are you sure you are hungry? I mean, what is the sign that you come to a conclusion that you are hungry? That's how it is. So let the very thought requires great deal of inquiry. Okay. So let's go into that. What is simplicity? Is there a real simplicity as distinct from false simplicity? Surely there is only one simplicity, not false or real. Okay. Does it consist in having few clothes, just one or two saris, dhotis or kurtas, living in mud houses, putting on lion cloth and talking all the time about simplicity? Is that simplicity? Please find out. Do not say yes or no. Okay. On the other hand, a man who has a great deal of everything, power, position, clothes, house, can also be very simple. Can he not? More clothes, more of outward appearances do not indicate that man is not simple. I mean, this is contrary to what Kalpana says. Kalpana says a few things. That means simplicity. Whereas he says, even if you have more of everything, you can still be simple. Okay. More clothes, more of outward appearances do not indicate that a man is not simple. Simplicity is something entirely different. Obviously, it must begin from within and not from without. Okay. You understand it? For instance, I may have very few clothes. I may live in a mud hut. I may live as a sannyasi, but inwardly I have conflicts. I have fears. I have gods, puja, rituals, mantra. Everything goes on just because I have the fears. Is that simplicity? I put on ashes, I go to temples, but inwardly I may be extraordinarily complex, ambitious. Okay, all that person is not a simple person. I may want to be the governor, or I may want to reach moksha, which are both the same thing. For in each case, there is seeking of security. But you call the man who seeks moksha a religious person, and the man who wants to become governor a worldly person. That's the difference. Both want security in whatever they feel gives them the power. But he says a simplicity, it goes on to the next pages and all. The answer lies in living a life where your mind is free of conflict. You may be the richest person in the world. If your mind is free of conflict, you live a simple life. Otherwise, you are always complicated. Even if you live in a mud house, but you keep on talking about it, I am very simple. A lot of politicians do that kind of thing. That man has only about, four sets of dresses, and he works all the time for people's welfare. He doesn't have any asset, and go on, and his followers will be talking all those things. But he needs that. He needs that advertisement for himself. That means he's somewhere, his mind needs that kind of security. He's having conflict. If it is not there, if one day if he's not being told that he is such a simple man, then he will feel insecure. So that person can never be a simplest person. That is what simplicity is. And many times, Kalpana, this is how this guy breaks, every thought process. That is why he stands alone compared to rest of the philosophers and the gurus. He thinks completely different. His wiring is different. Though a lot of physical wiring was done for him, his wiring is different. Okay. Now, is that simplicity understood by people? No. What JK meant as simplicity.
Another, you're an open book.
Yeah, we all are open.
Is that another explanation for simplicity?
No, you are open book. It does not mean you are simple. Your book, if you read your book, you are still confusing. Okay, you have conflicts. You don't know whether you want to work or you want to retire and then peacefully go to a countryside and live. You have a conflict. You will be in a conflict saying that is my saving enough for me, or I need to have more saving. When you are after something, when you think that what you have is not enough, so you are after something, you will never be able to. Your mind will never be at peace. Then you will never be a simple person. Whether you are having few crores or whether you're having 84,000 crores, like what is that? Shivanada's daughter.
So Sathya, I would like to ask the group now, based on whatever we have heard so far, what is coming out of the session as JK for them? People who have read, people who have not read, hearing them for the first time through you, what is JK coming out as? Can somebody share? so that we can take it from there and see whether that fits in or we have to explore.
I
I
have,
yeah, sorry, go ahead.
no, sorry, I'm just a listener now because my mind is not yet ready for understanding JK at all. So that's it. I'm listening.
I only had one request for Satyaji, that I never knew that Osho derided JK. In fact, I thought he admired him and sometimes referred to him like that, rarely but did. So I would be really interested in seeing any excerpts where he ridicules him, as you were referring. That was very interesting take for me.
Okay. When it comes to Osho, there is Osho before years and Osho after years. There was a difference in the personality. So the languages he used, there was a difference. I'll extract those snapshots from the book and share it. There is
Thank you.
respect in terms of as a fellow teacher, okay, as a fellow person who is guiding mankind, all that respect he had, no doubt about it. But he ridiculed. Let's be very clear. There is he never spoke about the person, the way of his teaching. He only ridicules the way of his teaching, saying that he confuses people. He says that JK would confuse you. That's how he say. But nevertheless, I'll pick up all those. I'll take photos of those books and share.
Okay, thanks. Thank you. Okay.
Ramji, any thoughts? You're on mute, I guess, Ramji.
Ramji, you're not audible.
Ramji, you're not audible.
Meanwhile, with permission from Satyaji, I'd like to answer Roli's question, because really JK's life is very interesting, very unusual, in the sense that, Roli, are you there?
Yes, Auntie, I'm hearing you. Hello, am I audible?
Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Yeah, Rolly, please go ahead.
No, I just want to hear Kamini Auntie about JK's life. That's really interesting.
Yeah, so the Theosophists, had predicted, they said that we know there is going to be born a world teacher. And they said that when we see him, we will know he's the world teacher. That is what they were propagating, Annie Besant and Leadbeater. And so one day when they were walking on the beach, this is the Besant Nagar beach in Chennai, there was a very poor family, children playing. I think he must, in that was J. Krishnamurti's brother Nityanand and all. And if I'm not mistaken, this is long back, I've read all this, Leadbeater saw him and he said he saw a halo around him and he knew this is the world teacher. And, they just got around the family and said, you don't know, your son is special. He's going to be a world teacher. We have to take him. We have to train him and we have to give him some special life. And they took him away to England. And that is, and the brother also. And that is where, he was kind of being groomed for this role of being a world teacher, which they had visualized, and they said that it is a prediction which is going to come true. And then one significant thing I remember is that he lost his brother. I think they were in their late teens. Satyaji can correct me. And that was a very traumatic experience for him. That was one of the greatest sorrows he experienced, And how he overcame it maybe is the teaching means the teacher he became for himself. That he was being trained as a world teacher, so he had to be as a very special person who cannot experience or cannot go under grief and all that. And here he was suffering a personal grief, which was for him very difficult to manage. But he came out of it all. But if we talk of simplicity, see, the point at which he took this decision, like Satyaji said, right when he was being declared as world teacher, he denied it. He said, no, I'm not a world teacher. Now that is maybe the simplicity without guile and pretense that he adopted, and said that, no, I'm nobody special. I'm not a guru. I'm not a, anybody special. I will only be somebody who will go with you and explore all the questions of life. So, this is his very interesting life, So he was groomed in England, and then, of course, he took on his own, he disbanded this whole thing of world teacher and the theosophic thought, not more than thought, the whole organization around him. And then he started his own way of trying to answer people's questions of life and suffering and etc. So I thought,
Yes.
Yes.
Okay, to add to it, is definitely yes, he was picked up from the beaches of Chennai along with his brother, and Nityananda. So he, though he called him Nitya, Nitya's death was too much for him to handle it, and he went through a lot of traumatic days and nights. Yes, he was taken up and groomed away from family. All that was very, very painful for him. He refused to be a world teacher, and when things could not continue with Theosophical Society, he simply moved away from Theosophical Society and started his own JK Foundation. Many of them question, if you are not authority, if you are not in favor of this kind of organization, why you started off this organization? That he answered, it is meant primarily for running the schools. But he had many schools here in India as well as even in US. To run the school, I needed an organization. That's why I started off this one. Otherwise, yes, he went through very painful. A great deal of it has been explained in his own biography written by others too, and from the website of Theosophical, AKF Foundations, you will see, and a lot of insight into his life will be seen in Vasant Vigar. Whenever you are in Chennai, you can go to Vasant Vigar and browse there. And recently, there was last year, I think, to celebrate 125th one, they had a festival kind of thing for a week. A lot of shows were conducted, and there was an exhibition right from his birth to death. Everything was there. It was a nice one. He was refused to be a world teacher within the definition of what Theosophical Society wanted him to be. But he went on to speak and bring in awareness and make change in the way people carry on with their life. That was definitely yes. Yeah, Ramji. Before we were Ramji, hold on. Kamini ma'am, you've been saying in the group saying that no ma'am and no G, and you keep on saying Satyaji, Satyaji. I know my hair is white and gray, but does not mean I am older than you. Please avoid those G's. Thank you.
Yeah, sure.
Yeah, Ramji.
Satya, just a couple of things. One is I find JK a little too much for me, quite frankly. I'm a simple person, and I find it a little above my, you can call it my pay grade. So I found Osho to be definitely a little more, amiable to, I'm talking of during my youth. I could actually understand a little bit of what Osho said, but even that, quite a bit of it went way above my head. So I think to say that JK, I have studied JK, therefore I can comment here is actually a misnomer. I don't think I can comment really very well on that. Coming to simplicity, I think it's simply the removal of all unnecessary things from your life, and what you're left with is a simple life. So that is my take on simplicity. And it usually happens towards the later years of your life. It happens to everybody. Even the big industrialists, end up leading a simple life towards the end of their thing. I don't think being simple in your teens and your 20s and your 30s is really feasible unless you want to become another Osho or another JK or somebody.
No. He says, if you look at it, when I read out a paragraph from this, he said you can still be, aiming to be a governor of the state or the prime minister of the country. But as long as your mind is very clear, if there's an in conflict, and you're very clear about your goals, objectives, and you have a straight way of achieving it, then you are a simple person. That's all he says.
So he's talking about simplicity of the mind.
Yes, that is always, see, his whole concept is about live a conflict-free life. And why conflict occurs in your mind is because you were conditioned. So the whole thing is, I think he was being conditioned to be a world teacher. So he's kind of developed an aversion towards condition. I mean, it's my own interpretation of it.
Yes,
so he goes on talking about in every subject, every question that he is, faced. He always talks about it. He reaches to that stage where he talks about conditioning, where he talks about is a conflict in your mind, because he was full of conflicts. I mean, in fact, I believe Nitya's, that is his brother's, health condition worsened. The Theosophical Society refused to, provide him adequate medical care. That itself was a cause of concern for him. So that is the differences started coming in, and then he finally moved out of Theosophical Society and he started on his.
But do you think if he had been alive in our era, the current era, he would have been less abstract than what he was?
See, it's like this. I mean, initially,
of course, absolutely a rhetorical question, but
maybe times would have changed him, because today it's what do you call it, a Twitter generation where you need to put everything in 240 characters or in that simple words. I mean, as I said, the sign of intelligence is to make things very simple. And when you understand a concept, if you cannot put it very simply, that means you are not understood yourself. That's very clear.
True.
But I believe still, when I read, because I read many of his books, and I also read many of Osho's books. Both probably talks about the same thing, okay? But Osho's way of putting it across is like what you and me can understand it very simply, because that is in a simple language. Whereas for him, it's like this. You go to Ratna Cafe, you read the menu, it says Idli Sambar, okay? You go to Taj Coromandel, you see the menu. The same Idli Sambar is written in such a way that it is a boiled rice cake, and the dal has to be, the sambar has to be explained so exotically that you feel that you are somewhere in you think it is an exotic dish. When you order and it comes to your table, you say, Idli Sambar to.
Don't forget the coconut sauce.
Yeah, coconut sauce is there. So, that is, if you understand his way of conveying his languages, then it is very easy. As I said, you just skip those initial paragraphs, because for one question, the first paragraph, the very next paragraph is like, he will ask 5 different questions back to the questioner. Okay. Just to make him think beyond the question, because a lot of people ask questions just for the sake of asking. Okay, they don't.
Yes.
Many people think that asking question is showing up intelligence. It is not. He says unless the question comes deep from you, okay, don't ask questions. Similarly, if you really need to understand JK, read a book. Otherwise, don't bother. I mean, the answer, like so many others are giving the same answer for the problem that you face. So many others are giving answer. Why do you have to read JK? It's not needed. If you don't like it, if you don't understand it, don't read it. But his way of answering is to declutter your mind. He tries to declutter your mind. Unfortunately, for that, he has to clutter your mind with a lot of questions and this thing. Once we understand his style of responding, then I think it's easier to read through those things.
I also noticed that there's a noticeable lack of humor in his.
Oh, absolutely, yes. The humor.
Osho, on the other hand, was terribly humorous.
See, it is like British, as Kamini said, he was trained in Britain. They need to have stiff upper lip. That's how it is. There is light humor. It will be there if you understand the videos, even Instagram, you can watch it. Very subtle and not many people, even if there are 20 people, there 4 will be smiling.
Correct, that's true.
How it is.
That's true. That's typical British humor.
A completely lack of humor is yes, it is true.
And he was very good at chastising the listeners and the audience, So that was his laughter when people just had to burst into laughter. But I read him in my, like 20s, and there are parts where he's so, especially on education, on patriotism, all these conditionings which he talks about. He also elaborates that, after all, what is patriotism, let's say, and then he breaks it into these all ideologies and this whole conditioning you have that you're Indian and, there's that and the other, and you can kill for that. So, there are things in his book and lectures which are very clear and not at all difficult to understand. Only when he becomes a little abstract is when he uses phrases like the thinker is the thought, the scenery, the seer is the scenery, like that. So then people are just jolted like, no, what is that, But that actually, if I were to read today, it's a bit like the Tantra, what Tantra says. But then Tantra also, you progress and then you finally understand what does it mean by thinker is the thought and all that. But so therefore, he was speaking like Ram Gopal said, that a little ahead of his time. People hadn't reached to that level of the breaking down of this sentence, of his. But like to give an example, if a Hindu sees a cow, he might feel sentiments of worship. But if an American sees it, he may visualize a steak on his plate when he sees a cow. So these are all examples of, conditioning. The cow is just a cow, but different people looking at it will feel different emotions, sentiments, or whatever is thought process or throws up. So that is what he was trying to break up, that we are so much conditioned and we never explore our conditionings. Because as Sathya said, that it can be very painful and it can be very challenging because to face your own conditioning is not easy, and sometimes you're not even aware. So that was what JK was trying to explode and explore with this audience all the time.
As to take off where Kamini left, it's first awareness and then acceptance of the awareness. Only then you can go beyond it. So that is why he kind of pushes a person to understand the person very well, understand yourself. Okay. Now,
I like the word what he uses in many of the books also. He says choiceless awareness, which is a very beautiful phrase that you have coined. Like, so you're becoming aware, but there is no, you don't make a choice out of that. It's not your conditioned awareness. It's choiceless awareness is just being. That word itself says a lot.
Okay.
Yes, correct.
I think when Shobha first said that he doesn't understand his book, I put out a response. Okay, not only Shobha, there are many people. In fact, somebody else asked him, "Look, I don't understand. I understand the words, but I don't understand the message." What was his response? I read out now. He is not bringing a message. He means he talks about himself, okay, as a third person. Okay, he is pointing out your life, not his life. He is pointing out how you live, what your daily life is, and you are unwilling to face that. You are unwilling to go into your sorrow, the torture of your anxiety and loneliness, the depression, the desire to fulfill, to become something. You are unwilling to face all that, but you want to be led by somebody. You want to understand the message of the Gita or of some other nonsensical book or of the speaker. That is how his reverence to Gita. Don't get shocked. Okay. The speaker says over and over again that he acts as a mirror in which you can look at the activity of your own self. That's the essence of him. He says, look, I don't bring any message to you. I am just only a mirror or trying somebody who's trying to make you understand yourself better. That's all his whole life is. And to look very carefully, you have to pay attention. You have to listen. If you are interested and find out the art of listening, the art of seeing, the art of learning, it's all there as a book, which is yourself. The book of mankind is you. Please, sir, see the truth in all this. And we are unwilling to read the book. We want somebody else to tell us about the book or help us analyze the book. When he says the book, he refers to that person. If you, some of you might remember, a long time back, I wrote in BC saying that the only book that we need to read is our own book, what we write at the end of the day. Okay, that is probably influence from here only. My influence saying that you don't have to read any other self-help book. Every day I write one journal at the end of the day, how my day has been. So when we read through at the end of the year, what has been the past 364 days, we don't need, next year our life will be much better. So that is a book, he says, he referring to the similar one. You are the book. You have gone through so much in a day, so much in a week, a month, and a year. If you write yourself a book and you read it, there's nothing else you need. Okay, because we don't read, we try to avoid this. We invent the priest, we invent the Swami, Yogi, and Sannyasi who tell us how to be, and so we escape from ourselves. So he says is when somebody told him, boss, I don't understand your messages. You are too, much above my intelligence level. He says, like, I don't bring any message. You understand yourself. Ramji, that does answers. Okay, you talked about listening, art of listening. Okay, so I'll have some response. Even some other books, some other else he says. Okay. If one may remind you most respectfully, sir, we should listen to the question itself, not wait for an answer. It matters a great deal how you listen, whether you listen with an expectation, with a motive, waiting impatiently for the answer, or whether you also listen to the sound of the words, listen between the words. Each word has a certain content, a certain significance. And the sentence, the sound, the quality of the question itself makes the hearing more acute. And in listening, you learn much more than from the answer itself. So if one may suggest it, really listen to the question. So what he says is listening is just not for the words. Listen, the pauses between the words, the sentence, the intent, the emotions, everything. That is what listening is. Listening, the art of listening was that. And somebody asked him, I remember this is in the year 1980, even before PC came in the picture and before MS DOS was written. Okay. Somebody asking, computers are taking over the world. Where is it going to? What is it going to happen? You know? And beautifully responded. The question was like, why are you getting pessimistic about the growth of computers? The question to him. And he says, the speaker has never been pessimistic or optimistic. He is just showing you that the computers can take over all that man is doing almost. The computers cannot look at the beautiful tree or the evening star, single and alone in the sky, or the morning light on the waters. When a machine can take over all that you are doing, thinking and learning much quicker than you can, what is going to happen to you as a human being? Yeah, some of the people who are involved with computers, the serious people, are really concerned about this. Okay, so what will happen if computers start doing everything? Man will commit himself to entertainment, which you are doing now with football, religious entertainment, or other forms of entertainment. I do not know if you have noticed that in Europe and America, sports is becoming more and more important, taking a great deal of time on television. This he answered in 1981. Okay. The new gods are the football players. They earn millions and millions. You don't know all this. Okay. Either human beings go along that line of entertainment or concern themselves with something much deeper. The computers are challenging you, and to look at the challenge, understand it, see what is implied. It is not pessimism. You have to meet the challenge. He says this. And in a similar response, he says, what happens to your brain if you are not actually keeping it active. I mean, if computers take over everything, okay, he says, now the computer is going to take over all the activity. Either your brain withers because it is not active, or it becomes active in a totally different direction. The activity which we have had is thinking, and the machine is going to take over your thinking, though not entirely, but 95% of it will be taken over by the machine. So if your brain is kept active like an arm, like any other organ, it will live. If you keep it steady in a position motionless, it will wither away. So the brain will become, it will wither away unless it is kept active. So what do? You keep it active through entertainment, by sitting on a platform, cheering some idiots playing, by cinema or by religious nonsense. It's all the same, entertainment's one and the same. This is what will happen when computers take over your thinking. You will waste your time in entertainment. It could be any form of entertainment. This he spoke on 28th November in 1981. 41 years later, it is still relevant, and that is what we are doing it. Okay, we are leaving our thinking to machines because artificial intelligence, machine learning. Today we all talk about it, and we go completely. We pass more time. We have more time for entertainment. Right. We are 5:20. Anything else? There are some more on Indian mind. Okay. What is an Indian mind? Here it goes. If one observes very clearly, the Indian mind is authority bound. It functions in a hierarchical movement. It follows, it accepts authority, the authority of ancient tradition and some ancient books, the authority of the guru, the authority of someone who says he knows. Would this be correct? Would this be correct? Sorry. Would this be correct? Which means where there is authority, there is fear. Have you ever watched how when you meet high up a politician, you grovel, almost double up with your false respect? This is one of the conditions of the Indian mind. The following of authority, psychophancy, fear, therefore total disorder. There is disorder in the streets, disorder in one's life, disorder in society, with each one out for himself. For example, if you're going on a road, if you're driving, obviously only when there is a policeman you have respect for the signal. Otherwise, if you think, hey, there is no policeman, just jump the signal. So he says Indian mind is conditioned by authority. If there is no authority, the streets are chaos. This is, he says. Because we've been kind of taught to respect the elders, start to respect the guru, start to respect somebody who is in power. So that's like this. Even politicians or film stars are adored here. I mean, worshipped here. That's the Indian mind. Whereas even if the ex-president walks past you in your American street, people don't say hi. They'll say, hi, Clinton, how are you? Beyond that, we will fall at the Indian president or Indian prime minister walks, like we will fall at their feet here next to us when they walk. Like our mind, Indian mind is like that. He says it's conditioned to follow authorities. Okay. And there are a few things on love and respect. What is love? Somebody asking a question. What is love? Can anyone answer here? Let's see how different are we from JK, or how different JK is from all of us. What is love? Anyone willing to answer it? Sorry, I correct myself. Anyone willing to discuss it? I mean, it's not an answer session.
Two people have more similarities and common point of interest.
Okay.
Attachment.
Oh my goodness. Okay.
Respect.
You can pat yourself, Shobha. There is no love when there is no real respect. Okay, when you don't respect each other, absolutely there is no love. Whether he is your servant or your friend. Okay. Have you noticed that you are not respectful, kindly, generous to your servants, to people who are so-called below you? You have respect for those above you, for your boss, for the millionaire on the street, for the man with a large house and a title. So he says, love, there is no love without respect. That is very clear. No other definition here. He says, if the respect is love. Simplest information he gives.
I got at least 1 point right.
Now, it is probably you are more practical. That's all. On sorrow, okay. Many of them, many people ask why people are sorrow. Always they are in sorrow. Okay. People are sorrow. They get into a trap of sorrow when they observe so many things that is affecting, going around us. Okay. So he says, what is sorrow? Tears, pain, self-pity, the loss of somebody whom you love, if at all you love, he says. Is sorrow personal, or is there the sorrow of the world which is affecting you? We have reduced everything to a small, limited me, my pain, my sorrow, and we hold on to that. We don't see the sorrow of a man, which we are. Okay, he goes on, he's questioning the person on what sorrow is. Finally, he says, the understanding of sorrow is the ending of sorrow. This requires a great deal of investigation into sorrow. Probably you have never shed tears. You have explanation for tears, karma, some cause or other, but you have never actually suffered, never felt the intense pain of it. You're always seeking comfort, escape from sorrow, aren't you? You have dozens and dozens of explanations for sorrow and the ways to escape from sorrow. But a man who realizes the depth of sorrow either remains with it, becomes cynical, bitter, angry, violent, or he transcends it, goes beyond it. So he says only way to go beyond the sorrow is to understand what causes the sorrow. If it is attachment, he talks about attachment very clearly. Attachment is what Buddha says. I mean, many of the concepts, if you look at it, all the spiritual teachers said the same thing. Just that it takes pain to present the same ideas to you without painting with any other religious color. That is a difference. End of the day, truth is one. Whether it is said by Jekki or Rajneesh or Ramana Maharishi or anybody for that matter, he also says for you to overcome the sorrow is to go beyond it. How do you go beyond it unless you dive into it? Because if the moment you try to escape it, the sorrow will come back to haunt you tomorrow or day after. Today you feel sorrow, you understand why you feel sorrow. Is it the attachment that causes you? Can you live without attachment? He says, there is danger. If there is attachment, there is danger. You need to understand it and you need to go beyond it. All right, and there is one on freedom. What is freedom? Freedom is like, we talk about freedom as if it's like freedom to do what we like, freedom to have any job we like, freedom to choose a woman or man, freedom to read any book, or freedom not to read at all. Okay. Is that freedom? We have every kind of freedom and we have what we have done with it. We think that where there is a choice, we have freedom. I can go to Italy or France. It's a choice. But does choice gives you freedom? Why do we have to choose? If you are very clear, perceive purely, there is no choice. Out of that comes right action. It is only when there is doubt and uncertainty that we begin to choose. So choice, if you will forgive me saying so, prevents freedom. So he believes where there is a choice, the freedom is not there. So what is freedom? Is it based on choice? Is it to do exactly what we like? Some psychologists say if you feel something, do not suppress it. Do not restrain it or control it, but express it immediately. And we are doing that very well, too well for that matter. And this is also called freedom. Is throwing bombs freedom? Just look what we have done to our freedom is. He says, freedom is completely without choices. If there is a choice, there is no freedom. There are further pages to it. Maybe you can read the book. I'll recommend that book. What book is, you will understand. Freedom exists only when there is no confusion inside me, when I am psychologically and religiously not caught in any conflict in my mind. That is his response. He comes back to the same conflict in the mind. He says, when there is no confusion inside me, when there is no conflict inside me, that gives me freedom. So wherever he goes, he comes back to the conflict in the mind. The conflict comes because of the conditioning, and that's how it goes. And finally, one question: does God exist? Okay, you read the question, it is very interesting. Kindly give me a straight reply. Does God exist or not? Yes or no? That's all the question is. Okay. His response. It's a lovely question, isn't it? When throughout the history, from the ancient Greeks, from the ancient Sumerians, has had this idea of God. I'm not at all sure whether in the Upanishad they mention God at all, or was it a later invention? So what is God? We are investigating. I am not attacking God. I'm not denying God. Who invented God? We are investigating whether there is such thing as God. Did God create us or we created God? God is omnipotent, omniscient, eternal, merciful, just all goodness. That is your concept of God. And if you say he has created us, why are we in the misery? Why are we in a miserable life? Why all merciful God create us in misery in his image? That is his response. If you look at it, the question is, please give me a straight answer, yes or no. And he gives one paragraph full of response. That is his way of answering it.
What did he finally answer?
All right. Okay. I'll read it here some more. So either you have created God or God has created you. If you examine it very closely, you have created God. I was told that in India there are about 300,000 gods and more. Every local person has his own God. So we have created God. See the irony of it. Thought has created God, and then thought worships the image that thought has created, which is to worship oneself. The better part of you is God. I wonder if you understand this. Let's be clear. Haven't you created the God, the local gods around the corner, or the local god in Rome or Tirupati or whatever, wherever? You have created them, but you are so uncertain, so frightened, aren't you? If you say you have created God, then you are scared more. Out of fear, you want security, you want safety, you want to feel there is somebody looking after you because you are afraid. And in that mind, you cannot accept that you created God. That is what he says. But he never answered the question very TG, whether yes or no answer he doesn't give. He says you created God and you are worshipping him. And you feel comfortable thinking that because out of all your confusion, there is somebody, your fallback, God is a fallback for you. That is what he says. So you created all these rituals, you garland, prostration, rituals, everything is created just because it's a way of, security for you. That is his answer.
Can I make
Yeah.
something? There are many people. One among them I knew was my father-in-law, who did not believe in what you say, God, or going to temple rituals, etc. So and another person, my husband's cousin. So I asked them, what do you do when you are facing extreme difficult situations in life? So they said, yeah, we do feel the fear, the sorrow, whatever, but then we tackle it ourselves. So, and we overcome it to the best of our ability, but we don't, get down and pray and ask God for anything. So finally, weren't we taught that Tat Tvam Asi? Isn't that the final message you get from the Gita or Upanishads?
Can anyone answer that? It's meant for anyone. Anyone can answer this.
The way I look
Indeed,
at
it is.
sorry.
I mean, Sridhar here. Indeed, it is. Diplomacy is the ultimate, but then it takes a lot of time and a lot of effort for all of us to reach that. I guess God or the energy or whatever, however you're going to call that, helps us in reaching that space a bit quicker, is my take on it. Very few of us are able to realize that diplomacy as we are on our own. I guess God helps us.
Right. I think we are well past our time. I'll come to that recommendation I promised. This is one of the best book, I would say, JK's letters to his school. Okay. He wrote as letter every fortnight. He used to write a letter to his schools. Okay, sitting in the USA, he wrote to all his schools. Because he wrote it to the school environment, teachers, and the students, the language he used is very, very simple, unlike many other books. This one is really good, and the topic, there are about 72 chapters in this. This is a book. I'll share it in WhatsApp. Some of the key topics I put it here. So each of them is a chapter. Okay, he takes up a topic and he writes about 2 or 3 pages about that particular topic. So it is meant for the students, it's meant for the teachers, and his whole idea is to prepare the next generation for a future. That was his concept. The schools, like my daughter studies in the school, I absolutely love the environment. The way if at all you want to listen to JK, you pick up a MP3 CD on education. There are about 5 hours or 6 hours of talk in that. Amazing clarity that he gives you on education. You remember this was spoken about, he spoke about all these things in the year 60s and 70s when he was at his peak, 1950s and 60s I'm talking about. The thought he had about his education, how to educate the next generation, how to educate the children, absolutely amazing. No schools can stand that thing. The environment, the friendliness of the teachers, and absolutely. I mean, if at all you have, okay, most of you would have a child which is already beyond school. If at all you have grandchildren, and if you're looking for a school, please ensure that you put them in JK school. Amazing schools. Right. Letters to the Schools is one of the book, and the second book is, I mean, if you listen to the session, you would have by now understood, because any question thrown at him, you'll always say, let's understand the question. So the book here is this: In the Problem is a Solution. In the Problem is a Solution. Question and answer meetings in India. That's a book. Both are, I'll send you the link and everything. This is again many of the day-to-day life, day-to-day questions that we have. So it is another example of how he will let you to explore the question itself and then find the answer for yourself. You don't accept what his answers are. So these 2 books would be a good, definitely start point, and especially the first one, which is there on the screen right now, JK's Letters to His School, is one amazing book that will, anytime you can read it, and it's very, very simplest one, easy to understand, easy to follow. And they say that's all. I mean, that gives you clarity for everything else. Right, that brings an end to my session. Anything I'm open to. Already well past time. Some people have dropped out. I see from the messages. Yes, go to you, TJ.
Thank you. Thank you. I think it's very difficult to take up a subject or a person like JK and then, promise to facilitate, and you're taken a very ardent, very tough, work, Sathya. That's what I could say, because it's tough to understand, read book and facilitate. Thank you so much for, like somebody said, to give a peep into JK to people who already know, people who are getting introduced just now on what he is, what kind of a thought processes, to give direction to our chatterbox of thoughts, how he goes very slow and makes us realize the awareness, the choicelessness, the freedom, the conditioning, the arising of thought, the question, the problems. Wow. thank you so much, Sathya. I mean, it's like going through years of studies, consolidating today on JK, and I'm sure a lot of people who are seeing this will be able to decide to either pick up JK for now and then go through it, or once for all decide JK is not. At least that much of a decision can be taken.
The reason is we are afraid of asking ourselves, thinking for ourselves, going deep into why I am getting this kind of fear or conflict in my mind. A lot of us run away from. That's what he says, escapism. If you escape, then obviously the problem is going to hit you tomorrow or day after or a year later. If you are facing the problem today itself, you analyze, go inside you and find out and remove the cause once for all, then you are free. Because you say free mind, conflict-free mind is what is needed for the best life that we can have. That is
a very intellectual, understanding, analysis, dissection to the extent that the thought evaporates. So that's what JK. And to answer Sridhar's query on the chat box, when I went to Vasanta Vigar, you will find the books of only JK there. Very few books of other authors would be there, or any other so-called spiritual gurus, but few books of Ramana Maharishis are also there. When I asked them, they said both of them question the nature of the thought, and through that they drive you deeper. So that's why they kept Ramana Maharishi's books also there. So I do not know. You can probably find some kind of a similarity, but it's Ramana Maharshi believed in symbols and all those kind of things also. Whereas JK didn't even believe that. He never had any kind of a support system whatsoever. It just pure attack the thought right at the root level kind of thing. This is my own understanding. I may be wrong. So for us to explore. Okay. And thank you so much, Sathya. And thanks everyone for joining today's session. And let's catch up.
Thank you for putting up with me for 1.5 hours. Thank you so much. Shobha, you are on mute and you are saying something. You are on mute, Shobha. Shobha, you are on mute.
Mute.
You are on mute.
Now can you hear?
Yeah. Now go ahead. Please repeat what you said.
So much. I don't know whether I will ever understand JK, but anyway, you made a beginning for me.
That book, which is that Letters to the School, that is very easy to understand.
You know what? Yeah, I saw the points, and he says that nonsensical book, the Gita. Actually, all these points are there in the Gita.
Yes. I mean, see, yes, if you read Gita, one book is enough. That's one book is enough for our entire life. Or you go to Tirukkural and decide that one book is enough for our entire life.
Yeah.
Just that we don't probably understand it because we don't make an effort to read and understand the context, apply it in our life. That's our problem. And Gita is something like every time you read it, there's a new learning, new understanding. That is because the background conditioning, our brain has more input. That's when when you read next time, it makes sense to us. It goes true with everything. But anyway, all you need is one book, whichever book you picked up.
Thank you again.
Nice evening.
Nice evening.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.